Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Grieco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. Today is the day we have all been waiting for. When I started this podcast... wait till I announce you. When I started this podcast, I had a lofty goal that I could string a podcast along for long enough that I could eventually sneak in and make people play Final Fantasy IX, and then I can talk about it with people. It was a long pursuit. I did it. So this will be our last podcast series. And to join me in this final pursuit, I'm kidding. This isn't our last podcast series. But we are talking about Final Fantasy IX. And I'm joined today by Rusty Billy Rothert.
Yeah, this is a Final Fantasy game for damn sure. Hi, everybody. Thanks for listening. I cannot believe I'm here. Why are we here? And let's talk about Final Fantasy.
Yeah, I thought Rusty was an appropriate one. I feel like you and Steiner, like if your spirit animal was a person, some sort of chivalrous knight who is also stuck in his ways and perhaps out of touch with the world. I thought it was an appropriate spirit animal.
Sure.
I am also joined by Pete Gourmayad Busby.
Is that the one that eats stuff?
Yeah, that's Quina's race.
All right, I'll take that. That's a pretty solid one. What's going on, everybody? Ideally, I'd like to start this podcast with a 20 to maybe 30-minute discussion of Roman numerals and their importance in history and how they're used. But we'll see how things go today.
One day, we'll have the Roman numeral podcasts everyone is clamoring for.
I've been looking at our listener feedback, and I'm seeing it constantly.
And we are also joined by the final fanatic himself, Chris ZombiePie Redacted. That's the sound of joy that you get from playing Final Fantasy IX, the greatest Final Fantasy game.
Well, in the country of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
Oh, God. God damn it.
You did it.
Normally we take like a 2-month break in between games, but it's only been a week.
Yeah. There are some life events happening over here that made that not a thing I could do if we were ever going to get this done in a reasonable amount of time and make everyone's schedules line up. So we're here talking about...
We could always do one Final Fantasy per year.
Nope. It's not how this train goes. You have all of them now.
So, Pete,
Yeah.
Billy, welcome to the Final Fantasy pain train.
I've just been waiting to get called up to majors.
Well, I played 7, 8, 10, Tactics 4, and 10-2.
That's
All the
So
way.
I've been on the train before.
I started.
I'm just sad that this game doesn't have a sphere grid.
I started 3 and 4. 3 was terrible, and I hated it, and I don't remember 4. So
Yeah, that's the appropriate response to 3. We'll get to that one later, ZP.
God damn it.
It's
No,
not
we
a good
won't.
one. Not
We
you.
won't.
He will.
Son of a bitch.
He will.
Yeah, so
So welcome to Final Fantasy IX.
welcome to this horrible experiment, this horrible idea that Gino roped me into this blood pact with. So I
What
hope you've
was
got your knives.
Gino's
So
side of this bargain?
I played Myst and Riven.
he played 2 games that are ultimately maybe at most 4 to 5 hours, and I made a mistake. My life choices, I regret them.
Well, to be
Sure.
fair, I also played 3 Pajama Sam games, so I've played 5 games, and you're only on your 3rd. So
And Pajama Sam is the second best of the video game Sams.
Did we ever go
Other
to
than
space in
serious?
Pajama
Other
Sam?
than serious.
No, we didn't.
no, but Pajama Sam does go to the land of weather, which is it's in the clouds. He goes
Thunder
to
and lightning aren't so
And
frightening.
Cloud is a Final Fantasy character, so
It all ties together.
Did you ever have to catch Oh, wait, we did have to
Lightning-
catch frogs.
Lightning is also a Final Fantasy character. So
Is
Oh,
Sky.
God.
Like Sky is.
okay, so
I-
first
Ugh.
impressions of Final Fantasy IX, everyone. I'm not going to give mine because this is not my first impression.
The cutscenes look nice. It's a Final Fantasy game, guys.
I don't understand why they're popular a quarter of the way in.
Okay. ZP?
I guess I'll share a more extensive first impression. In comparison to the previous entries that we have played for the purposes of our ill-fated journey, I find Final Fantasy IX to be the slowest of the Final Fantasies we've played. I think I outright hated the first 2 to 3 hours of this game, and it kind of got interesting in the last hour.
So I can piggyback a little bit and say that from my experience with 7, even though the first 4 or 5 hours of 7, the story that's happening in that game isn't actually what the whole story is about. You at least are really driven by some very serious directives that appear meaningful. But in this game, it's like, hey guys, you're in like this weird theater bandit group, and you want to kidnap a princess because she actually wants to be kidnapped, and it's a frog lady queen, and it's just a bunch of hot bullshit. Like in 7, or even 8. 8, you're like trying to pass some kind of test, like to graduate from this school or something.
This murder school.
Yeah, this murder school. And in 7, you are like an eco-terrorist organization that's trying to stop some bad eco-terrorist shit from going down. Or sorry, make some cool eco-terrorist shit go down to
The
stop some
ultimate
bad
premise of
consumerist shit go down.
The ultimate premise of the reactor sequence from 7, even though it's a visual spectacle that I quite enjoyed, when you stop and think about it, it's kind of messed up. And 8, we have talked about 8. The problem with 8 is that it creates a canon, then ignores it, then creates a new canon, then puts that to the wayside, and then finally commits to a canon that is absolutely bonkers.
Yep. And 9 starts slow and builds from there, which I appreciate. But it's something that I grew to appreciate over time, and at first found the game to be boring. So I was in the same spot when I was playing it, but also I was like 12, so I found a lot of things boring.
That sounds like a dig, Gino. Sounds like, I was young and stupid when I disliked it, so you people who dislike it.
Maybe you were always right, and something happened to you as an adult to boil away your decency and common sense.
Well, one day you will read the article I wrote about this game, and then maybe you'll understand what boiled away and what happened. But that will be at the end of this. For now, we will have to discuss Final Fantasy IX as it is. So what did you guys think of the combat system, of the mechanical systems of Final Fantasy IX?
I can start first because I want to actually talk about that stuff a little bit. In the other Final Fantasy games that I've played, and the most of the ones that I mentioned earlier, the most that I played were Tactics, 10, and 7. Okay? And in 7... Or sorry, I'll say in Tactics and 10, the combat system is like full weight. It's about as weight as you can get. And I have
when
to
you say weight,
means.
it's W-A-I-T, not
Yeah.
heavy.
Sorry, you have two options in this in this game. You have to go into the menu to find them. You have the option to have your battle system set to the setting active or set to the setting called weight, and they mean two different things naturally. A full turn-based game like Final Fantasy X or Final Fantasy Tactics is as far to the weight spectrum as you can get. Every time your character is set to act, the whole game time freezes until you make your decision. Nothing else is progressing. It's closer to that in 7, I think, because you can also turn on weight. It's like when there's like bars that tick up, and when when it's time for your character to act, your character will do something. And when you're going through your menus and stuff, the time is also frozen for you. And in this game, it's slightly different. It doesn't wait for you unless you're like one level deep into one of the menus. And that I don't like, because in order for you to actually have a moment to stop and think about where your status is in the game, you have to like go to a menu that maybe you're not going to use. I'll say one example of this is when I was fighting big lizard man before you get to Burmecia, Galzamazoluk.
Gizmaluk?
Gizmaluk. I really wanted to steal one of his items, and so
he's gonna maul you.
God damn it!
I needed to play defense, and in order to do that, I had to make sure that I was making the right characters defend and heal and stuff, and that was way hard to do if I could not stop and think about anything, because using the basic attack and basic defense don't put you in any wait time. So you have to be basically instantly real time doing that stuff if you want to have a chance of even surviving. I got to that fight with like 2 of my characters still alive out of the 4 that I had with me. I mean, it was a rough fight. I used like half of my items to
that
just not get murdered.
That fight's
So,
difficulty spike.
I have a rub with systems that don't give you enough choice to wait. I like to slow games down like this, and I feel like I wasn't able to slow down as much as I want.
Why didn't you just turn on
change
wait?
the speed?
No, I did turn
system.
on wait. So I have my battle speed set to slow, and I have wait set to on because I want more time to think about stuff. Pete, the point that I'm making is if you're set to active, there's no waiting at all.
Yeah. No,
And if you're set to wait, it only waits for you if you're like one menu level deep into whatever you're choosing. So if your character gets a chance to act and you just don't do anything, all the timers of all the allies and enemies will keep going. It's only if you're like in some item or magic menu that it stops time for you.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you're going to be repeatedly attacking or repeatedly defending things that don't use a layer of menu, then you basically don't get wait.
Yep. Pete, what were you? Do you have anything to disparage about this, or?
I have a snide comment to make. I'm honestly partial to this sort of battle system when sort of things fill up. I just think Chrono Trigger did a better job of it, and I liked theirs better.
Chrono Trigger is just a straight up better game, so we can't really fault Final Fantasy IX for just not being as good as Chrono Trigger.
Good point. That's fair.
ZombiePie.
The neophyte speaks. Never played Chrono Trigger, never played 10, and I'm just working with 8 and 7. I think one of the problems that I have with the combat system in 9 is how it's kind of a regression from the experiments of 7 and 8. 8 was a huge experiment, and it breaks the game.
It's madness.
In a wonderful way. And then 7, I guess the revolution is, or the real revolution there is that there's technically no magic in 7. You're using rocks, and you level up those rocks to cast spells.
Magic
and
rocks.
The rocks come from the earth and the energy. But you're supposed to preserve
come from
the energy,
earth energy.
But...
It's the knowledge of the ancients.
It's Mother Earth's bling.
And then what's nice about 7 is that you can essentially swap abilities in between your characters, and any ability can be leveled up by a character, and any character has the ability to use any materia. And what I was totally unprepared for was the idea of a more rigid class system, such as when you finally equip items to your characters, there are certain abilities that you are locked away from when you give good equipment to certain characters. There's equipment that only female characters can wear. There are abilities in equipment that everyone can wear, but only white mages or blue mages can utilize or level up. And I was maybe not prepared for a system such as that. In terms of the combat, I haven't gotten a game over screen quite yet, but I would say that I have had to revive, use potions, use Phoenix Downs, use Phoenix Finians, the most that I have ever used in a Final Fantasy game, especially in the introductory sequence or the introduction of a game in the Final Fantasy franchise. Another thing, I can clearly tell that the combat system here is kind of paying homage, or it's trying to seek a balance between the revolutionary steps forward that 7 and 8 took, having something to where items play a role, having a system to where characters have abilities, while also going back to the past. But I don't really understand or necessarily appreciate that. So the fact that it's a much more traditional take of combat isn't something that I find especially appealing. And one thing that the other hosts kind of haven't mentioned that I really want to talk about is I think the trance system is bad. I found the trance system to be the worst. The worst.
I mean, it's limit breaks.
Final attack system compared to the final attacks or the limit breaks in 7. I thought that those were better than the trance system. I definitely enjoyed the final limit break system in 8 far more than the trance system.
So wait, but just Gino, before you get started, and we actually discuss this, could somebody explain to me, like, basically how you get trance? I didn't understand when it activated.
So it activates by default when you take enough damage for your trance meter to fill up. Whenever that happens, you just you just get trance. There's an ability called High Tide that causes that bar to fill up faster, but otherwise, whenever it pops, and you get to use that.
You really can't save it, so there's no point in like banking up trance and then using it in a critical
Which is
fight.
my biggest problem
Can't
with
bank
the
your
trance
breakers.
system in comparison to the limit break system of 7 or 8 is you do have the sense that it's a progressive thing that you work on building and then can strategically use depending on the battles that you have or you are anticipating. The trance system pops off. It lasts for 2 to 3 turns or however long it does, and then it's gone. At best, it's innocuous. At worst, whatever you do gets reflected against you, and it kills all of your characters, which is lame. But I found it to be a real step backwards from the limit break systems in both 7 and 8, because those made sense. They were very easy to surface and understand. And in some ways, I don't necessarily feel like the trance system does much to differentiate the characters.
Okay,
So I
where-
want to push back a little bit here in defense of the way trance works, because I found myself when I played 7 just not using their limit breaks, because I'd say, oh, I bet I'm going to need this more later, and so I just not use it. So I also didn't quite like how trance had no save ability or really no plan ability, but I can understand that there's a merit to saying there's a mechanic in this game that's going to get used because we're not going to give the player that much control over it. I mean, I think that there's going to be very few times where your trance popping kills you. It's never happened to me, but I mean, I guess it could happen.
It's almost never disadvantageous. The thing that I would say the savability aspect and using it strategically, I agree that is a flaw with the system. But one thing that I appreciate in regards to trance as opposed to the limit breaks from 7 or 8. 1, the limit breaks in 8 are straight broken. You can just use limit breaks forever, every single battle if you want
And
to.
it is glorious.
It's glorious but broken.
It's the best part of the game.
Every single character they're all just super attacks that will level regular enemies and make bosses a joke. So, I mean, it's really fun because you're just using super attacks every attack all game long, and that's kind of fun in a weird power fantasy sort of way. But in terms of, like, strategic depth or characterization, there's not much to that other than blowing things away all the time. Final Fantasy VII, it's similar to the trance system, except every single character, when you hit limit break, does some sort of super attack, except for Kate Sith and Vincent. Vincent just kind of toggles a state, and Kate Sith's super attacks just kind of suck. They're random, but
It's jackpot, baby.
basically. So with that game, a lot of the super moves are basically just a single super attack. They happen fairly regularly, and you can store them up, but it's just a high damage attack. It's a fancy animation, some high damage. In 9, each trance affects a character differently depending on who's trancing. So Zidane, when he trances, his thief skills become something called like
Free energy, is it?
that's one of his moves, but it's Dine or something, I think is the name of the ability. It changes from thief skills to Dine, and when that happens, your abilities, like the different thief abilities that you've mastered, turn into super moves, like free energy, tidal flame. You eventually get more and more powerful moves. So he all of a sudden changes from a thief who's largely finesse in terms of character to being the highest damage output character in the game. Vivi,
Can I just chime in real quick?
Sure.
Can we talk about how your explanation is better than whatever the game says about what the trance system means or translates to than what the game actually says? All you get
sure.
is Steiner says, "Hey, buddy, you got the trance." It's like, well, what the frick does that mean?
Well, to be fair, you can
Have
talk
fun
to
with that.
You can talk to Mogster in the swamp
God
in the
damn it.
tutorial, but you shouldn't do that.
Monster.
They
Yeah.
just tell
God,
you what
those-
happened. So
Those tutorials
They're
are
bad.
the worst.
they're bad. I skipped them.
Oh my god.
I've never read them. But for example, Vivi.
You're 0 for 3, ladies and gentlemen, for tutorials in a Final Fantasy game.
Yep. They figured it. I mean, I don't think they've ever figured
God
it out.
damn. Do they ever get good? Do they
No.
actually ever? No. Okay,
Nope.
great.
I had
Awesome.
guidebooks. Those are pretty good.
Wait, talk about how the guidebook for 9 was like a horrible abomination.
Oh, it was trash. It was poop.
That's right.
The guidebook for 9 had an accompanying website that now is defunct. So now the hints that they say look it up on the website don't even work because there's no website. But Vivi, like the different trances, Vivi gets double black magic when he trances, so he can use a spell twice. Garnet's, her summon magic turns into a higher level summon magic, so you'll get to that when you actually have enough MP to use summons, but you're not quite there yet. Quina, when Quina trances, her ability goes from eat, or she's ability goes from eat to cook, which basically makes the threshold to where she will eat a creature. It goes from they have to be at 10% health to be at 50% health. So all of a sudden, she could just eat things all crazy. And Steiner's trance just makes his damage output quadruple. It's just a ton of damage. But every single character, and Freya's trance, when you jump using her jump ability, she just stays up there and just rains spears on people for as long as she's tranced, which means she's completely invulnerable to damage and gets free attacks. And her spear move goes from hitting one target to hitting everything. So every
just
single
rains
character,
hot death.
Yes, rains hot death. So every single character, their trance it adds to their characterization slightly in terms of how they are differentiated in gameplay. It doesn't necessarily add to their characterization as emotional characterization, but it adds more gameplay depth and variety. There are characters who you unlock later on where their trances more drastically. There's one character specifically I'm thinking of that when he trances, his gameplay changes pretty dramatically. But I think that variety, even though it is not as useful in terms of combat, I think that variety adds a little bit of malleability to the gameplay that I appreciate. It makes encounters a little bit more fun when those trances happen because they're really transformative, instead of just, hey, the reason why this is good is because I'm going to make this thing dead way faster. Not all of the trances will do that, though. Many of them do. They do it in different ways, instead of just a ton of damage.
I don't know, Gino. I think you're being a little bit generous here. I mean, it seems
fair.
like they're all just damage increase. What's the difference between Steiner attacking once at double or triple damage and Vivi attacking twice?
Because the spells that Vivi's using don't have to be attack spells. You can mix up what spells he's picking. He eventually gets some spells that do non-damage sort of things, and
so
you can
do
use those.
fire and then a buff of some sort?
Fire and then steal MP from your opponent, so you have MP to use the double spells again. Vivi is more straightforward, just straight damage. But someone like Quina, who in a boss fight, Quina's trance is just damage, but in regular battles, Quina all of a sudden becomes able to just eat whole squads of enemies in a single fight, which is super crazy. And Quina is also a character who every single weapon has the high tide ability, so Quina is a character who is designed to be in trance almost all the time, which is kind of cool.
And just eat. Feed the beast.
Yes, just eat. Just get swole. That's what Quinn is about.
Gotta eat big, get big.
I agree that it's not as flashy as the systems from 7 or 8, and it's definitely not as useful. But I think there's merit to it, and I agree that the systems, when compared to the Junction system or the Materia system, the systems of 9 are definitely not as inventive. But it's worth mentioning that compared to the earlier games that it's drawing inspiration from, the customizability from the different equipments and gaining new abilities that way is actually substantially different than the earlier games. It's a lot more in depth. So I appreciate the sort of changing equipment around, because all of a sudden it means that there are considerations for each of these pieces of equipment other than your numbers going higher. So there's reasons to equip different items and weapons beyond raising your strength or your defense. And there's also, if you press select, or the equivalent of the select button on your menu when you're looking at different weapons will have different elemental properties. So there's another layer of consideration for what weapons and armor you should wear at any given time. There's a item I think that you should be able to get that reduces water damage by 50%, which against Gizmaluke, who uses water spells all the time, makes that fight way easier. So there's more depth in the item system than there is in most other Final Fantasy games.
Yeah, that's true, because I think in games like 7 and like 7, I think the merit of the items just came from the base stats and how many materia it could hold.
Yeah, and the growth rate.
Yeah,
that's
what you really wanted at the end of it. I mean, there was nothing interesting about any of those items except what they could do for your other items.
Yeah,
but I feel it's kind of like a cop-out way to spec a character. I found that this item system was much closer to like Final Fantasy Tactics.
I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like they're speaking a different language.
It's fine.
So, in Tactics,
I don't know.
No, it's not.
We're not going down the tactics well.
No.
But yeah, items are more impactful in tactics than they are.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
What version is everyone playing of 9?
Steam version?
Are you guys using a controller?
Yes.
Is anyone using the mouse and keyboard controls?
No. Why would you do that to yourself?
Because I've been playing all of these games with mouse and keyboard controls every single time.
You're just wrong.
And I appreciate the fact that someone saw that they had to make keyboard controls for a Final Fantasy game and took the time to put in WASD controls.
What?
But they're the dumbest freaking WASD controls I've ever seen, because the action button is still X. So you have WASD to move your character around, but then X is still confirm, C is cancel, and then V is bringing up the menu.
So you move your index finger.
So while I'm trying to... Well, here's the problem, Gino. I don't have 3 hands, so I can't have one hand on WASD, one hand on the action button, which is X, and then another hand on the mouse.
Well,
that's a problem.
ZP, can't you select things with the mouse?
Why do you...
Yes, you can, but you still have to actually hit X as an input.
No, wait, but can't you do...
You can use the mouse to direct the character. You have to double-click, and then eventually the option will pop up to hit X or Enter for actually interacting or talking to a character.
Well, but I thought it was... Oh, you mean... Okay.
Can't you move from, like, the D key with your index finger over to the X key? I'm in front of a keyboard. And that doesn't seem that bad. When compared against the last 2 games you've been playing... God. Which, when you tried to articulate what the controls were, my hand was a gnarled mess.
Escape battled is G and H.
They're at least next to each other. That
the
makes
help
sense.
button is 1.
Okay, wait.
Changing the perspective is J. Fixing the camera or recentering the camera is F. But here's the weird part. Rotating the camera is G and H. So if you accidentally hit G and H instead of 1 at a time, and you want to escape battle, you just completely screw up the camera angle.
Okay. I'm going to say that's not ideal, but when compared against what came before, this is a revelation.
All right, ZP, I'm playing mouse and keyboard right now, and I will agree it's not great, but I feel like you made this harder on yourself than it had to be.
That is fair. That is kind of the summation of this whole experience. CP making things harder on himself than they need to be. So one other system I want to... Oh, one thing about the combat system that I've noticed just from playing this game so many times that I don't know if you guys if it's bothered you guys or not, but what do you guys think of the stealing system? Because by virtue of the main character being a thief, every single boss in this game has items that are worth stealing because you always have a character who's capable of stealing.
Yeah, but Zinedine Zidane is the worst fucking thief I've played in a Final Fantasy game. Like, his steal rate for certain items that are actually worth a damn to steal is like 2%. Some of the best items in the first 2 or 3 bosses, if you try and steal everything from them, you just end up subjecting yourself to unneeded frustration because... Yay, Zinedine Zidane is trying to steal some stuff while 3 of your characters are defending and then taking damage, and then now you have to heal them.
Yeah.
And you end up using items and MP when you probably shouldn't have to worry about wasting that MP or those items. He's the worst. He's a terrible thief, but the items that you steal are clutch.
They're so good.
They're so good. But if the whole point of having these great items with these bosses is to reinforce his character as a thief, it reinforces the fact that he needs to go back to thief school. Go back to ninja class, son.
Go back to the streets.
Yeah, so Zidane doesn't have the best sticky fingers.
He's got super headbutt skills.
Yeah, so Zordon doesn't have the best thief skills, but I will say that I think that it doesn't... Okay, I want to steal all the things. I'm a completionist, so I want to steal all the things, and every time I see a boss, I want to see what kind of goodies it has. I like that it tells you when you're done stealing.
Yes.
It gives you... It says either couldn't steal something this time, or you're done stealing.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah. That way, when we're done, you know that you can just nail the disc to the wall, because you stole all of the things.
Why is it that for some of those really great items, the draw rate is like 5%? Like, I get that some of these bosses
20 times.
So you do it 20 times, and you end up dying 5 or 6 times, and you have to revive your characters, and you end up spending like 5,000 gil on Phoenix Downs.
Okay, I want to say, first off, I think the rate is way too fucking low. I agree. Yep. I found this to be... Like, as someone who's played this game, like, 10 times, that is one of my biggest frustrations with it, and it is why I am very happy that there's a fast-forward option on the PC version that they added to the game that was not there in the PS1 version. But they do eventually give you an ability called Bandit that increases your steal rate. It is not great.
But it's still 1% of 1%.
Yeah, it's not great. I think that was a mistake. I think that the steal rate in this game should be much higher, just because it causes a game that already is kind of slow, even at the highest speed before fast forward existed. It makes it even slower, and this game is not super fun when you're in a fight for a long time. It's a lot more.
Does he at least gain the ability to get something like Mug, where he can attack simultaneously when he steals?
I think so, but it's late. Like, you get Mug late.
Because that just, again, elongates the battles, because there's usually great items, so you keep stealing, and the draw rate is low, and you're not actually doing damage on a character. Mug is in basically every Final Fantasy game.
I think it's one of the last weapons, though, that gives you that.
Yeah, I haven't gotten it.
Oh, that sounds like a wonderful idea.
Is stealing
attack plus steal, right?
Pete, what did you say?
To steal things as much in the other games?
No, because in 9... Because your main character is a thief, they made sure every single boss has an item that is usually 1 to 2 towns worth of shops better than what you would find or be able to buy. So every single boss has something worth stealing that's very useful.
Bosses in 7 and 8 had stuff to steal. Like, I felt like Cypher always had something that was worth stealing in 8. I felt like there were multiple bosses, especially with the Turks. You should steal their stuff because you could get good bangles.
Yeah, but... In 7, there are specific enemies a couple of times in the game where you want to steal, but not every single one. And then in 8, everything has something that's worth stealing, but in 8, there is only Mug. So when you are stealing, you are also beating the shit out of things.
Yeah, that seems useful.
There's no choice.
That is useful.
It's just...
And it's a damn shame that we were not going to get that until, like, Disc 3.
And I don't even think it does full damage, if I remember correctly.
I think we have to have steal in this game do no damage, or else they kind of shooting themselves in the foot. If every chance you had to steal whittle down at the boss's HP, that would make some items just RNG ungettable.
Yeah, and that's why I think that they made a mistake. I think
at least in this way, at least in this way, every item is gettable. It might suck, you might get a game over screen, but every item's gettable.
Sure.
And if you're like me and you just don't give a shit, you can end up just buying all of these items from the vendors that you meet immediately after these boss battles.
Yeah, it's usually not... It's a little boost, but it's not so huge that if you're not stealing, you're way behind.
It's not like that one time when you're in the Shinra HQ, and if you steal certain items from Shinra soldiers, Cloud has a weapon that basically you can cruise through the entire game for like the next 5 hours.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
In 8, where you could like get something from some characters, and now you have an item with one of your characters that does a lot.
Or just, hey, you've got an item that makes your characters fucking invincible.
Or cards
that game's broken.
Yes. I want this game to be broken, Gino. I want to break it.
It gets broken eventually, but not as hard as either of those two games. Because those two games just have win buttons. So, why don't we get to the story? Let's get to the part that I guess ZP... Oh, actually, there's one system I forgot to mention. The ATE system. The Active Time Event System.
Oh, my fucking God.
It's the worst
way
to transition. Just make it like a movie and have cutscenes. Is it too much to ask for to just have cutscenes?
No, because I want them all gone. I want them to not exist.
I just want the ATEs to be cutscenes. Don't make me like frantically jam on the one button to just be able to see cutscenes with characters that I would appreciate knowing more about them. And unfortunately, most of the cutscenes that you get from the ATE system kind of aren't important.
Suck.
So this is why I like the ATE system. It's
Jesus
because
Christ.
you can have Pete saying, I don't want to see any of them, and ZP saying, you should watch all of them, and the game says, you choose.
It's the most non-committal answer whatsoever.
It's a middle ground that makes everyone unhappy.
Because what you end up getting is this giant interface that just glows in front of your face, reminding you, oh, wait, you're playing a fucking video game. So, hey, buddy, we're going to break the wall. We're going to break your immersion in the video game and remind you that we have this shitty interface where you have to jam on buttons in order to see cutscenes.
What do you mean jam on buttons?
Because you have to hit the one button.
You hit the one button, and then it pops up, and then you say, okay, watch that video.
It blares in your face like 20 times, and it's like, oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit, oh, shit. And then...
I mean, there's no time pressure. It doesn't go away. Did you not know that? It doesn't go away? He didn't know it didn't go away.
No comment.
They stay. They wait until you press the button. It's not like a QuickTime event to watch a cutscene.
I played a lot of QuickTime events, so maybe you can understand where I'm coming from.
That's fair. So the reason why I like the system is not just because it allows you to opt into cutscenes. That's not a great reason. My reason for liking it is this is one of the first and only Final Fantasy games that gives a rat's ass about the characters who are not in your party at a given time. Most of the time, even in RPGs in general, if a character is not rolling with the main party, they might as well not exist, and then you'll learn what the hell they were doing the next time you see them, and they'll tell you in some exposition. Final Fantasy IX attempts to have every meaningful character be involved almost at all times through the active time event system. If the game deems a character's story worth telling, it gives you the option to see that stuff in it's not real time, but in chronological order with the main story, which I think is a pretty nice way to have a multi-layered narrative where multiple characters' storylines actually matter because you're following them throughout the entire length of the game instead of just having these story bursts. And you don't have to get all of this dialogue and everything, but there are characters like Cinna and Baku and characters who are side characters who aren't, whether you like them or not, they get more characterization than some of the main party members in 7 or 8. Those party members get like one cutscene or one sequence, and each of these side characters get multiple scenes to kind of play out their relationships, develop relationships with multiple different characters, and then kind of see the world. And you get to see these characters interacting within the larger world, and it adds some scope that I think that the other games kind of lack.
Yeah, I mean, Gino, when you put it that way, you make it seem a lot better than I wanted it to be. But I still feel like there's a question of selection here. Like, I don't feel like it's necessarily as purposive as it needs to be. Like, I think part of the reason that, in any sort of storytelling medium, you need to make sort of protagonist selections. And I've never really been a fan of world building for the sake of world building. You know what I mean? Like, if Baku's narrative... He's like the head thief guy, right?
Yeah, he's Pigman.
if Head Thief Pigman's narrative sort of contributed to the overall story more purposively, at least from what I've seen thus far, I'd be more inclined to like this system.
Yeah, and that's
I
one
also
thing...
echo that. Okay, go.
Oh, that's one thing. Me having kind of the perspective of having seen all the cutscenes and know where all the stories go. Most of them do come back. Okay. They pop up. You see these characters that you think are side characters who won't matter actually extend throughout the entire game until the last scenes.
That's a lot of faith to expect from a gamer, though. To be like, hey, follow this, trust us, it'll pay off.
And that's why I think that it's a system that kind of grows on you, because at first it's something that seems like these cutscenes that don't make a lot of sense, and they're generally characters that you think you don't need to care about, or they're not that interesting. And as the game plays out, you start to see how these characters kind of intersect, and how the different locations in 9 kind of gain personality over time, because unlike 7, 8, a lot of the other games in the series, these places, these different towns and cities actually change throughout the discs and throughout your revisits, to where different NPCs will have different dialogue. The economies of the different places will change. The actual environments, like the screens themselves, will change. And so it adds this sense of kind of a living world as long as you're playing it, in a way that those games don't. Those games kind of move as these series of vignettes, whereas 9 tries to add a sense of a functional world, not just a bunch of dioramas, which I think the ATE system really plays into, because you get to see people from different walks of life than your adventuring party. Like one of the characters that you actually leave behind, Ruby, she's an actress. She has a shitty cowgirl accent. Like, you have some ATE, there's an ATE, like, the girl who was left behind, and it's just like, hey, Ruby's still out in Alexandria. And she will come up again. And that's a character who, in another game, would have one line of dialogue, and then you'd never see them again, unless maybe towards the end of the game you can find them. And I think that it's a cool thing that this game says, hey, these characters are worth getting to know, so we'll show you their stories.
I think that's fair, because...
And you don't have to, which is... You don't have to care.
It's optional, and I'm always down for a game letting you have more if you the player care. If we the players care about learning more about these characters, but really more about this world, we have an option to do so. And if we're a speedrunner who wants to try to beat this game for the Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run, then you can say, I already know this stuff. Fuck this. Moving on.
Yep, and some of the ATEs later on, I think, are extra important to view, but early on, it's a lot of world building. So
now, Gino,
go ahead.
Some of these ATEs give you items though?
Some of them do, and some of them result in you losing money. Like there's different ATEs. Some of them set up.
That's the part that I don't like, because I wish that ATEs were either completely sterile or completely beneficial. You know what I mean?
I mean, they are completely beneficial. If you watch every one, you will get more. The times when you lose money is because of it's actually a benefit in the long run. It's something that someone steals from you, and then you can get stuff back.
But what I mean to say is,
every single one had an item?
No. They don't all have items.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Is that what you want?
Let me rephrase a little bit.
Just like so many potions.
I wish you would lose out on nothing if you didn't watch them, except like extra story bits.
Okay.
There are some key items I think you get from the ATEs. Don't you get Kupo Nut from one of them?
You have to watch that one. If there's a key item that you need to get, the game will force you to watch that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then that makes it a little bit better. But some others. Okay. I guess if it forces you to watch it, then they're really not taking. They're really not going all in on it. The only times when not watching it results in missing out on an item, they are items that are useful accessories, but they're not things that if you miss out on them, your game's boned or something.
And Billy Joel, I mean, it's not like you're going to miss a fucking one of these ATEs, because it's literally going to tell you to push the one button.
Yeah, I know it'll tell you to push
times.
the button, but if I
The
say,
button's
hey, I
right
don't want
there.
to play it, then I shouldn't feel like I'm losing out on anything except story.
Okay, that's fair. And so, without further ado, let's talk about the story.
Yeah.
So,
Eh.
so zombie.
Great work of
So
game
it starts
literature.
out. You're gonna kidnap a princess. Did any of you intentionally screw up the "Okay, who are we kidnapping" sequence at all?
Yeah,
So,
well, I just said it
Yeah,
like once.
that was pretty funny.
yeah. If
I
you
don't-
screw it up enough times, he starts cursing at you and saying,
Does it?
"Yeah," which I appreciate. That's choice right there. Dynamism.
That's deep
Dynamism.
storytelling.
Real quick, can I make a full disclosure?
Sure.
I've already told Gino this. I don't like fantasy. I really
Just
have
as a
a
genre?
near thematic xenophobic hatred of traditional fantasy, especially high fantasy and medieval fantasy.
We're
Well, it's
talking
good that
like
we're in the
swords.
final.
I don't
Swords.
like that. I really don't like the setting. I really dislike the thematics. I really dislike a lot of the worlds that are created in Final Fantasy IX because they're such traditional fantasy settings. And in a lot of ways, this game is an homage to previous Final Fantasy games. And as someone who has only played 7 and 8, I feel like that homage falls on deaf ears. But also, just going to make a full disclosure, not the biggest fantasy fan. So my allegiances toward 7 and 8 actually grew as I played the first disc of 9.
So you realize that you like sci-fi.
I
Steampunk
realized I
more
like
than-
sci-fi way more than fantasy.
Than high fantasy. That's fair. And the game gets more steampunky and less high fantasy as it goes on, and it gets weirder also. But early on, it is the highest of high fantasy. Snoop Dogg might as well be here.
And I think that's part of the reason
legit.
why so much of the first disc fell flat. It tries to create these worlds, and I found them very stale and uninteresting. And part of that might just be me.
There are hippo people and fish people.
Yeah,
this
but
game.
it creates this multicultural society without creating an actual culture or like explaining the people or where everyone's coming from. It's a fantasy only in name. And the biggest complaint that I have about the first 2 hours, which, like I said, not a big fan, it felt like an exercise in checking all the boxes. Oh, yay, we're on a little adventure. We got a princess, check that. Oh, we have a Casanova character, kind of a Casanova wannabe character. That does a double check. Oh, we have a fish out of water character that's always unsure about themselves. Check that.
We have this knight who's really stuck up.
Oh,
And-
God. Steiner. Oh, God. He's...
Steiner's. I'm pretty bored with Steiner shit right now.
I'm so done with Steiner.
He gets
I'm
better.
done.
Like the nice
I
thing.
don't
Really?
believe you.
This is just going to constantly be I must protect the princess. It's just now he goes about doing that in a different way that's more sincere.
So, I'm not gonna like try and sell you on all these characters. Hopefully, they will sell themselves over the course of it. But yeah, that's fair. A lot of them are very one note early on, and until they start growing, it can be a little wary.
The characters, the first four you are interested, the first four that you are introduced to are literal walking tropes.
Yes, at first they are walking tropes.
Well, how far are we allowed to kick this can down the line? Like, at what point does a game have to make a turn in order to justify its storytelling?
If it's a 40-hour game... Okay, so I actually was talking to Gino about this. Final Fantasy IX kind of feels like that television show that everyone tries to convince you that you gotta see, man. It's one of the best of the season. It's one of the best of the years. And then you start watching the first episode, and it's like, yeah, okay, got it, yeah. So, and then you watch the second episode, and you have the same reaction. And you start questioning, like, dude, what is this? Like, nothing's happening. And then you watch episode 3, and you can kind of see the visage of what the show's attempting. And then you hit like episode 4. And it kind of comes together, and you realize, oh, man, Walter White is an asshole. Or, oh God, that's what the girls from Stranger Things is all about. Final Fantasy IX, I can kind of tell, is the Netflix original series of video games.
Ooh. Get destroyed.
I don't know that that's a bad thing, like those, but it has definitely a slower pace. I would say for me, when the game started winning me over at first was the dolly sequence and the cargo ship.
So
I think
what disc are we talking here?
That's
one.
disc one?
That's one where the explosion and the giant evil guys attacking you.
Oh, with like the waltz?
Yes.
Suit?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I had the same reaction to that scene. I was like, oh, this is kind of cool, but like, I wish I knew what these characters were about. I wish I knew why these characters are something I need to be emotionally invested with.
So, the
I don't see
Alexandria
the carrot.
sequence-
I don't see the carrot. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So, first
all
impressions was meh.
So, Alexandria, like, I agree. I think that it establishes Vivi as kind of a naive character that doesn't know his place in the world quite yet. This is a very specific thing, but I enjoy that early on they use a tripping animation for him multiple times where he's just kind of falling all over himself. And as the game goes on, that animation stops being a part of his repertoire. And I enjoy that they use a very specific physical tool to kind of denominate his growth. It's something that, you play the game 10 times and you notice that they're doing that, but that's not something you pick up early.
I enjoyed Vivi as well for a different reason, because I try to always put myself in the shoes of the characters in video games. I mean, that's from a closeted writer of fan fiction, but I was able to put myself into the shoes of Vivi in large part because he came across as a character that, if I was a Final Fantasy character, I would be Vivi. Just screwing up, having emotional breakdowns, not able to take everything in, and kind of like just aback at everything that's going on and everything that's happening. So Vivi ended up becoming the character that I gravitated towards the most. And Zidane, Garnet, Steiner are gross. I don't like them. Like, the fact that Zidane is always trying to play grab ass in every goddamn scene he's in is the literal
It's the worst
thing in the goddamn game.
I don't
That
understand
woman-
what you mean.
Playing grab ass? Like,
I
literally.
mean, no,
when
He
he-
literally
He
grabbed
literally
I know all
grabbed
about-
ass.
I know all about grab ass. It's like my
Really knows all about
personal
grab ass.
pastime. But aside from the literal grab ass, I feel like he's just doing what sort of a
Did you
lighthearted
not interact
protagonist
with-
is supposed to be doing.
Did you not interact with any of the NPCs in the environment?
Yeah,
Like,
I
every
did.
time you interact with a female character, he literally hits on that female character,
That's
and they
funny.
run away, suggesting that he's this Casanova wannabe, and it's part of his character in the introduction.
I mean, it's a part of his character because one of the first abilities that he has on one of his items is protect girls. He has basically an ability that's supposed to be for a knight character, but for him, he only does it for women.
Gino, your fave is problematic.
He's not my favorite. My favorite's Vivi. It's not close. I think Zidane, I enjoy his shtick more than I enjoy Cloud or Squall's early on. Like,
Squall.
before those characters start developing,
Cloud and Squall don't develop,
Squall.
They
so the
do.
fact that Steiner or that Zidane does just makes him better.
well, I will take Casanova Wannabe over Dark Brooding, fuck everyone who's trying to help me. I was raised in an orphanage. Oh, the terror.
But it's so funny. I feel like I can laugh,
At Squall.
but I can't laugh at Zidane. I'm just disgusted by him.
That's fair. And eventually he will get over that shit, but not yet, and it's gross.
How many eventuallys have we gotten so far, though? I mean, I can
Do
only
they ever
take so many eventuallys.
Do they ever stop talking 90s era slang? Because that's just driving me insane, and it reminds me how dated parts of this game are.
I don't know. I don't
Did you
think
guys-
so.
So
Did they say
Really?
tubular? What?
did you guys read the achievements for this game?
No,
Did you
why
guys
would I
actually read the achievements, the Steve achievements for these? One of the achievements, and I'm not shitting you, is called "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor."
Let the bodies hit the floor.
And I just,
know why.
I can't.
Podcast theme song from here on
I
out.
can't.
Yes. I don't. Look, whoever wrote the achievement names was not a part of the original development team. That is non-canon.
That's non-canon.
Let
The
the bodies
One
hit the
Ring.
floor.
There's an achievement called "The One Ring."
Well, that's just, I mean, it's a fantasy game. They have to have that.
It's all on the cards.
That one's not great either.
I don't know. I got that one first. I played a lot of Tetra Master.
It's just gonna make you mad. So you go to the evil forest. It's not that eventful.
Forest is like, I mean,
other than the end.
The cargo ship is a quick, fun little scene. Alexandria, I feel they could have done more with that setting to really build up the evil nature of the queen, or like, wouldn't it have been cool if like the queen was like this despot who was ruling with an iron fist, and you saw evidence of her like torturing people, or
yeah, like maybe she murdered those jesters
like
2 minutes into the
building
game.
up a reason why Garnet felt comfortable running away or justified in trying to get away from her. Like you saw her doing something horrible. Instead, you just see her eating popcorn, watching a play.
The thing is, she's kind of not a despot, is the thing. She does some horrible shit, but if you remember from the sequence with Sid, when you first meet him, he says, like, ever since your dad died, your mom's been acting strange to Garnet. And at first it's not clear whether she's up to some nefarious shit or she's a woman in grief because her husband passed away. And that's something that I think they give her a little bit more motivation than most of the shitty one-note villains that we've seen up until this point. Turks don't need a reason to be kind of jerks. They're like Shinra lackey thugs. But
and a few other things. Did you guys end up getting all of Steiner's fellow knights, the Knights of Pluto?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got him.
So here's the problem I have with Steiner is he keeps complaining about how, what's her name, Beatrice, is always above him and held in a higher regard than him. How about you get your shit together, Steiner? Your characters are all over the place. They're bumbling buffoons, and your soldiers are clearly worse than Beatrice. So he feels unjustified in being maligned by the queen who prefers Beatrice. Because Beatrice feels like she earns the praise and support of the queen because she actually gets shit done.
Question, is this the first matriarchy we've seen in any of the games we've played in the course of this entire podcast?
I feel like...
Would you call it a matriarchy?
I mean, the queen's in charge, her number one military commander is a woman, and all of her soldiers are women except for the Knights of Pluto, who are like 10 dudes.
But is the queen in charge insofar as she's a widow?
That's unclear. But now that she is in charge, the entire power structure, save Steiner and the Knights of Pluto, are women.
Okay.
Why does she look like a hilariously generic Monster Mash thing?
I don't know, but I love her stupid fan. I love her ridiculous animations. I love when she blows up the theater ship and is so happy.
That was a weird moment because in one scene you watch her attempting to blow up the ship, and then in another scene she is telling her jesters not to kill Garnet. Well, then why the fuck did you try and blow up the ship?
She tried to blow up the ship, not Garnet.
How did she know that
Garnet was on
explosions on the ship wouldn't cause collateral damage that placed Garnet's life at risk?
She's reckless.
She's a loose cannon.
But
oh, god damn it.
So in Alexandria, the part that I like the most is I like the play. I like that they went to the trouble of actually writing a like half a weird play, and I like the attention to detail of this. Like, the background scenery looks like a kind of shoddily put-together production, which I thought was a nice attention to detail.
Which
like
places into question why everyone's excited to see this play in the first place.
Well, I mean, I'm guessing in this world... Actually, in this world, theater is surprisingly prevalent, now that I think about it.
And for some reason, they know how to speak in iambic pentameter, despite the fact that Shakespeare doesn't exist.
Look at that appreciation. They went to the trouble of making it iambic pentameter. Look at that. That's some craft. This game was originally written in Japanese.
I kind of liked... Well, I guess I'm biased. I like the little sword scene you have with... What is it? Blank?
Yep, Blank.
I got a 100%. I got a 100% in that scene and got a moonstone.
Way to go. I've never done that.
What's the moonstone do?
It gives you a beast kill boost. If you level it up, it's... yeah.
It also has a secondary use that with a different character you're going to meet in the future. But
okay.
It's not like a super amazing item, but it's cool to get it because you can only get that through normal gameplay, like near the middle or end of Disc 2. So it's kind of cool.
I got enough to just get a bunch of money.
Yeah, that's pretty good too. Money's
and I used the money
100%.
to just make like the early game way easy. I just bought whatever I needed.
That's pretty solid. Then you go to the Evil Forest,
which I think is actually the worst level in the first disc. It's essentially the sewer sequence in any Final Fantasy game where you play against typical fantasy fare, not so hard enemies, and then you have the figure your shit out boss battle.
Yep.
It's fighting sewer rats.
What makes the Evil Forest evil?
It's full of plants and monsters and animals that want to kill you.
But like the Evil Forest was always evil.
Yes.
Like I think there's an eco-critical point to make here.
Why doesn't someone just burn down the Evil Forest?
No, that's the opposite of an eco-critical point.
Why don't we just burn
the Evil Forest
the
isn't
fucking
so evil.
forest? If it's
maybe
evil,
everybody should just get the fuck out. Maybe the forest
remember that?
is fine on its
You remember
own.
that scene in The Princess Bride where they just send the entire army to get rid of all the bad people in the forest? Do that, but to the Evil Forest. Just burn it to the ground.
Well, it turns out when you try to burn it, everything gets petrified.
Yeah.
Which
then just punch it and then break all of the petrified forest. Ugh. Why does it get petrified? Did we find out why?
It's cursed. Or something. I don't know.
You're just destroying the biodiversity of this environment.
You're not wrong.
Burn everything.
But Blank gets turned to stone.
Yeah, it was a sad moment. That one.
Yeah, I like great toss from Blank.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's move from Blank.
I didn't expect a parchment to bounce like that. But...
So has Blank been to the Evil Forest
physics.
before? How did he know to get out of the Evil Forest in the exact cave system that would lead to the location where they were going to? Is going to the Evil Forest a common occurrence for everyone in this world? Do people just go to the Evil Forest for shits and giggles?
Didn't they crash there?
You crash there and you see a river at some point, and you basically just follow the river out. But I think that's what's supposed to be the rationale. And you also... Blank has a map, which is why he comes to get you. So he is supposed to know where the hell he's going, where the other people don't. And that is how Baku and everyone else survives. They just kind of follow the river and get out of there. One of the ATEs is like Blank saying, "Hey, follow this river."
Where's my doll?
Poor doll. It burned up in the fire.
I really don't like it when Final Fantasy games have you fight the same goddamn boss multiple times in quick succession. And that's exactly what happens in the Evil. Fight that plant monster that takes people hostage twice. And then
the plant
fight
cage.
Another weird plant monster after that.
And then you get to go to the ice cave.
Oh god, it's the ice level in the Final Fantasy game. Woohoo. Really getting out of that variety, eh?
I feel like that one was not so terrible.
I like the frozen plants. I like that it's not just a regular ice level. Like they have some frozen fauna and flora that I thought was nice. It's a nice twist. It's not just barren icicles everywhere.
Yeah, make cutting new ground. Like, let's add some icy trees and shit.
Yeah. It's still a snow level. It's still a goddamn snow level.
When you've played as many snow levels as I've played, just not having pine trees everywhere is just, wow. You thought of something slightly different. Way to go.
Gino, just your unconditional love. Just like all the tiny little tidbits you like to pull out.
It's not unconditional love. I think that sequence isn't super great. I hate the boss fight at the end of the ice cave.
Yeah, that's fucked up. That's
Black Mage 1, 2, 3 or something like that?
Black
Waltz 1
Black
plus
Waltz 1.
Sea Lion.
Yes,
And
Sea
if you try-
fucked up.
And
Yeah,
if you
just
try to
against
attack Sea Lion
Zidane.
early, Black Waltz just completely does all of the damage you do onto the Sea Lion, despite the fact that Sea Lion is a bigger threat than Black Waltz 1. So I was like, hey, this guy's fucking me up real bad. Something that I really didn't like in Disc 1 is how this... And there's another sequence where you are forced to create a party where there's no healer. So you are very reliant on the enemies and... the items in the game to heal up. And that is fucked.
Well, hang on a second. They give you a way to generate items really, really easily. If you just spend like your first turn in a fight trying to steal something, you're almost certainly going to pick up a good item, like very first thing.
A potion or a phoenix down, and so by the end of the game,
but then even then I'm healing only one person rather than using heal all on all of the characters.
Yeah, it's
so
not
I have
as
to
efficient.
waste 3 turns instead of just 1.
It's not as efficient, but a lot of these characters, other than that early moment where I think you're talking about when you have Freya, Zidane, and Vivi in your party, that is probably the most healing deficient you will ever be. So, yeah, that part sucks because you kind of have to adjust to this all-offense team out of nowhere, and you're kind of getting to know Freya. But we're jumping the gun.
Yes. So Sea Lion sucks. This battle sucks.
You do get to trance usually.
Yes, you get trance, but once again, like I mentioned earlier, you get trance. Steiner says, "Oh my God, you can trance," and it's like, what the fuck does that mean? How do I take advantage of trance?
It means you're a Super Saiyan.
How do I make sure that
Charged
I get the most out of trance? Could you at least take the time to explain the difference between the trance systems for the characters? Like when you go into trance, how is that different than when Zidane goes in trance?
Steiner's just not that bright.
Do you like that the character models change when they trance also?
Like Zidane becomes Goku.
Yeah,
Zidane becomes a furry.
Yep. Vivi.
He's got a pink merkin around his crotch region.
Yep. Vivi's hat goes from floppy to pointy.
Yeah. He gets
He's
erect.
all the way excited.
He goes all the way up.
No one can stop him.
He has a big hat.
He's all the way up.
So you beat Black Waltz 1, then you go to Dolly, which is
surprisingly long. You spend a surprisingly long amount of time in Dolly, and it's a transitional scene that I think probably went on for too long for what you get out of it, and I feel like they could have made more out of Dolly. Like, what if it had melted clocks in the background, or like weird-looking, surreal couches that look like cows? That would have been great.
How big do you think Salvador Dali is in Japan?
Pretty big, because that's
basically
basically
to get a town named after him.
Dali is like Salvador Dali. It's like
actually who it's named after?
Probably not.
I mean, Dali is like 80% anime.
I believe you.
I just blew your mind.
Maybe.
This is where I think I developed my distaste for the ATE system, because they pop off one after another, after another, after another, and it really breaks up the flow and pace of the Dolly sequence or the time that you have with the main cast. It would have been fine if we had maybe 2 here at the beginning, wait a little bit, see 2 more, but they're literally like in too quick a succession, and it really hurts the flow.
Yeah, they get all of them out of the way before you go into the subterranean area in Dolly, which I think that's intentional, but I don't necessarily agree with the decision to pepper you with that many, especially ones that may not seem super important, like Garnet kind of learning how to speak regular English.
That scene was so bad.
That was
bad.
A pretty cringe-worthy scene.
It was so cringy. We haven't mentioned this. What the fuck is Garnet wearing?
Like a jumper.
Good.
She's wearing like spandex jumper.
Royal
like a onesie.
Whatever.
Like a onesie.
And then what is Zidane wearing? He's just wears the same costume. Is he like?
He's got poofy pants, which I find weird.
Pants with a collar, and he's got a hole for his tail.
That's fine. Can we just take 1 second to appreciate? I just learned Magic Hammer on Quina. It's one of my favorite moves in Final Fantasy. It's pretty good.
Way to go! You did it.
Pretty good.
Mission accomplished. Shut it down.
Really good against mage characters.
I don't like Quina. I don't like quinoa. It's I'm not good. I don't react well with insoluble fiber and also shit characters.
So the revelation in Dolly is that Vivi is not a regular person. Black mages
really?
are
It's almost as if like he looks completely distinct from the other characters.
There are fish people and hippo people. Who's to say that like a black mage is that
doesn't have a face like?
But he thinks he's human, which is like the weird part.
I'm surprised to hear that from you. That he thinks he's human instead of saying he is human because he thinks he is.
No, I would say none of them are human. That would be the move I would make.
Okay.
So, like, Vivi's no more human than the rest of them, but it's weird that he thinks he is.
Well, he thinks he's a person, I guess.
Okay, person. Yeah, he's
Sure.
definitely a person. I would make that move, yes.
I would say he also maybe has consciousness.
Yeah, and I don't know that he... Well, until that point, he did not understand that he was of a different race. Or a different...
But he mentions...
type of
well, no, that's right. He's
guess.
raised by the quinoa people, so
He's
I
just
guess
sort
it
of
makes
naive.
sense.
Okay.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know that he might
Scotty
be
doesn't.
some sort of... Oh, God damn it. I'm not prepared for some sort of bullshit clone or bullshit orphanage scene. I'm not ready. My heart is not ready. I'm not ready.
Fine.
I don't want to...
Like I said, you're not going to get the rug pulled as hard out from under you as 7 or 8.
Turns out black mages reproduce by budding, so...
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
They're made in weird steam egg things, mist eggs.
So wait, am I supposed to immediately assume that like Vivi is created from a factory line?
Not necessarily. He seems to be of that race. He seems to be a black mage, so.
But
he
for some
probably
reason
wasn't-
different.
Yeah, the other ones don't possess language, do they? Doesn't seem like they do.
No, they
No.
can say "Hail Satan." Oh wait, no, I mean kill. Sorry, that was a
Yeah, they do say
Freudian
kill.
slip. Hail Satan.
They say kill, and and I mean they look slightly different than Vivi with his floppy hat and he's so little. Everyone else is bigger, but it's clear that he's at least of that species, or if it's a species, it's hard to say. Like he's part. It's like a golem, like a magic golem. But that moment where he has that revelation that, oh crap, what am I? Like literally, what the hell am I?
But he only
pretty
has
cool.
those moments when it's convenient to the story because, like, in the next scene, he's just dicking around fighting monsters for funsies, and then kind of forgets like the whole idea of his personhood or identity is in question.
Yeah, I mean, you can only sustain an existential breakdown for so long. I mean, he
And
could
that's not-
spend like the rest of his life.
That's also not true. He, like, at first you find the machine, then he sees the Black Mage assembly line, then they get captured, then they're on the cargo ship. Or they fight Black Waltz 2, and then they're on the cargo ship. There's no break where he's just kind of dicking around. Unless you leave Dolly and go run around fighting monsters, but that's, like, the game's pacing does not seem to be such that it makes you run around and do other stuff after that sequence. You're supposed to go pretty much straight on the cargo ship. which I think the cargo ship scene is probably one of the highlights of Disc 1. When you find the Black Mages kind of up and moving around, and Vivi completely unable to interact with them, despite kind of being the first example of another creature like himself that he's ever seen. And they just ignore him. And then the sequence when Black Waltz 3 blows them all the fuck away. And I just love the framing of that shot with the Black Mages kind of falling through the clouds. I thought that it's well composed. And the decision to kind of leave one of the hats on the ship, but you never really see what's under their hats, but the idea that there's still just one of these hats on the ship, I thought was cool. And then using the trance ability to kind of play off of that emotional scene and add emotional weight. Like, I thought it was well done.
You want to suggest that trance adds emotional weight?
Well, that's
based on the fact that it's like triggered by emotion.
Well, that's why.
Then why doesn't that ever happen again?
It does.
Oh, fucking Jesus Christ!
I think I don't know. That seems fairly. I get what you're saying.
It's very direct.
Yeah,
it's contrived is what it is.
It's not impactful, I want to say.
Sure. It is one way, it's like a flag. It's very blunt, but it's a way of saying, hey, this character is very emotionally turnt right now.
Yeah.
They are freaking out.
It's inelegant.
Yeah, it's inelegant, but it's... Considering that I don't think any of the games up until this point in this series had done anything like this, where they are trying to signify characters' emotional states in combat and out of combat, I think that it's a nice attempt. Tying in this mechanic to an emotional state.
Yeah, but then by that logic, anytime you take significant damage, the characters become emotional.
Yeah, you're suggesting that by taking damage, they are gaining something emotionally.
And they definitely mix their metaphors where they use it sometimes to mean like a limit break, like I've taken enough damage, I'm not taking it anymore, and it's that kind of thing.
I don't know, Gino. I think you're pining for it. I think sometimes a banana is just a 12-foot penis.
Well, I mean, the two times up until this point that you've seen where someone just has a limit break is when Garnet is in danger, Zidane immediately trances, and then when Vivi sees a bunch of his people try to defend him and then die in front of him, he just starts a battle in trance. So that's what they're doing. It's just by making that a regular mechanic that they use outside of these scripted sequences, it takes some of the weight away.
That's the problem. They can't have it both ways.
Yeah.
They tried.
They did.
I'll take them trying over the other games where it's just a pure mechanical system, like the limit breaks. There's not supposed to be some story ramifications of the limit break systems.
Okay.
So you leave there, then you get to Limblum. You get to high fantasy New York.
Basically.
Yeah.
With taxi cabs on steampunk rails.
And a hunting
and a theater district full of people waiting outside of a play for autographs.
One of my problems is that in terms of creating a distinct style or world, it highlights how Lindblom is more of a better environment than Alexandria. And in one way, I find that to be slightly questionable in terms of the story, because the Empire of Alexandria is depicted as being this giant military threat, and then when you go to Lindblom, you see a more awesome and more developed city. And so I question how Alexandria is able to defeat another empire, or is this military threat to everyone else.
I mean, development doesn't necessarily correlate with military might.
They have this advanced airship fleet that is supposed to give them military might. Like, their source of power is technology.
Oh, yeah. I got the idea that they have more airships. But then you actually see, like, one.
They're gone, aren't they?
No, some of them are, like, out keeping an eye on stuff. Like, they mention that some of their airships are kind of keeping watch over Alexandria. But some of them are just in the airship dock.
Well, what's that? There's that whole R&D subplot, though.
Yeah.
Like, it's making some cool thing. And it's like, oh, shit, man, when I finally figured it out, we can use steam instead of mist. Isn't mist a type of steam?
I think it's
No.
like miasma.
Or maybe.
Mist means the evil shit.
Yeah, it's a miasma.
Basically,
Causes-
miasma from Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles.
Or Inuyasha, depending on where your touchstone is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, we found out we can burn these black rocks. It's called coal. It's going to be the next empire.
You just wait. I like that Sid basically cheats on his wife and gets turned into a bug. And that's his backstory.
I mean, infidelity is a bitch.
Yeah, don't fuck with his wife. Apparently she can turn people into fucking bugs. It's messed up. Sid,
You meet Freya.
you meet Freya. Freya's great.
Freya's great.
I do like Freya, actually. I think she's one of my big favorite characters so far.
Zidane just goes to a bar despite being a 16-year-old and then starts drinking.
Well, you know,
Video games.
He lived a rough and tumble life.
It's fantasy.
Video games.
But Freya, I think,
T for
like,
T.
if your problem with the other characters were that they were either too cute or too frivolous, I think Freya kind of dodges some of those problems.
One doesn't get rid of 4. One is fewer than 4, Gino.
I'm just saying...
That's actually one of my biggest problems with the story up to this point, is that it's so saccharine and sweet. The characters are all super positive, bubbly. They're just... Oh, it's like a color guard is animating towards the progress of this plot. Like, yay, yay, sis boom ba, let's go over to Lil Blom.
Yeah, but your complaints with 7 and 8 were that they were super dour and these characters were kind of assholes.
No, my complaint was when the game would transition from being super dour to, it's time for wacky fun adventures with Yuffie. That was when I had the problem. If you want to be dour, you're dour for the entire game. Or you do a gradual transition to a different theme. Or when there's a good point to have a quiet moment with the characters where they bond. So 9's solution is to throw one character that's the complete opposite of the other 4.
Yeah, there's a pretty abrupt tonal shift. where
Oh,
it's like,
brother, that is Final
Oh.
Fantasy.
And then it's like genocide of Freya's people.
Yeah, we're going to have fun hunting all these animals in the streets, which is kind of fucked up.
It's
And
like
now
the
we
running
have
of the
to
bulls.
and now we have to watch an act of genocide.
And I guess we can fast forward to that because I don't think that there's that much in Limblom to
No, there's really
talk
not.
about. I mean, it's a cool location. I like
She puts
the
she
theater
puts,
stuff.
puts the Mary Jane in their food and they go sleepy time.
They do go sleepy time, and you do get to do Chocobo Hot and Cold, and you get Quina in between,
Yeah.
going to Burmecia.
Wait, I thought Billy Bob Thornton wanted to talk about Tetra Master.
Billy Bob Thornton, Tetra Master.
Yeah, so there's a whole other game inside of Final Fantasy IX. It could be standalone. In fact, there is a standalone spin-off Tetra Master game.
Yeah, I mean, if you wanted to play bullshit on your phone, you can play Tetra Master right now on your Android or iOS phone.
Is
Yeah.
there any reason I need to play Tetra Master?
No.
Should I-
No.
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
No, there's no
Yes,
reason.
but not much.
Okay.
It's not as intense. Like Final Fantasy VIII, if you play the card game, you just break the game immediately.
It's also
In-
a fun game.
Yes, it's a better game. In 9, there is eventually a reward, but it's not huge.
It's
Uh,
a bad game.
Gino is blowing it way out of proportion. I don't know what the one reward is, but
Victory is its own reward.
yeah, like everything that I've seen about how to play Tetra Master says, hey guys, just so you know, there's literally nothing you can gain from doing this, nothing of value. Gino says that there's one thing, fine, I bet it's fucking useless.
It's
But
not.
It's
anyway, it doesn't matter.
Is it a
It's
really
an
big
item
sword?
and it's good.
Not,
No, it's an accessory. It's good, but buy it, it's not.
99.999% of your Tetra Master experience is for nothing except your own enjoyment.
of a
Some pride.
bad card game.
So
It's
I'll
a
say
bad
that
card game.
it's
It's a bad
just,
card game.
It's just
We
a
should've
mini
just stuck
game
with
that's
the
there.
Jump rope simulator.
It's a bad card game. I played plenty of card games.
I don't think it's a bad card game.
Bullshit. You have a card that's worth 16 fighting a card that's worth 2, and the card that's worth 2 somehow miraculously defeats your card that's 16.
It sometimes
That's a
wins.
bad mechanic. That's like Risk.
There is a dice roll effect to it. You're right. So that's I think the only drawback of this entire thing is that it is less predictable. They made the margins of RNG too wide. You should be able to confidently play a better card and have it trump a weaker card. Right?
I'm sorry if I wanted to waste my time on die rolls. I'll go with Gino and play Chocobo Hot and Cold.
Yeah!
Which is its own level of bullshit, but oh god.
The rewards are so much better.
What does the person who plays Magic the Gathering say about Tetra Masters in comparison to card games? Because I'm a Dominion player.
Play Magic the Gathering?
Well, first off, I'm a Dominion player, but this is a bad card game.
Yeah, my problem with Tetra Master is manyfold. One.
Manyfold?
Manyfold. Multifold.
There's many folds on that.
Manifest.
Man, none of the. All right, keep going. I shouldn't have interrupted.
Manifold.
Now I'm not interested in your folds anymore.
Damn it. But, okay, so one problem. It's a coin flip for who goes first, and there is definitely an advantage to going second. 2, the boards are not set until they are randomly configured. Mm-hmm. So sometimes you will play someone, and the board will have very clear lanes.
Very, very strong preference towards the second player.
Hang on.
Yes.
No. There's not.
Yes.
I've played so much Tetra Master, and I think that there's a...
Sometimes the stones will create corners that favor the person taking the corner second rather than first.
You gotta build your squad. You gotta build your squad so that you have a play, a good play.
It takes forever to get a deck that's worth a fuck in Tetra Master.
You have to play. You gotta build your squad. And
you don't even know who has the good cards unless you use a good guide or something like that.
I didn't.
And then I
just played fucking everybody. Everybody that I saw, I played like 3 or 4 games with. And yeah, I lost some, and I lost some good cards. But you can win them back.
Terrible.
You can win them back. I mean, I've had probably, I don't know, 40 or 50 games or something like some shit like that, and I've had probably 5 or 7 perfects. You just get their whole deck they use.
You're gonna really love when you hit the 200 card limit or 100 card limit, and then you have to throw them away.
Fine, because you just keep cycling out the bad cards for the better cards. It's
but
okay.
you have to do it. You have to go through the process of finding the bad ones and throwing them away.
I will happily
all the goblins.
Okay, look, this game has plays for going first and going second, and if you understand its combo system, it gets rewarding.
Yeah, but the problem...
The combos... Oh, god damn it.
The combo system is just, if you take a card via a clash, so when 2 cards have... Every card has little arrows on it, and they are capable of taking in the direction which their arrow points if a card is adjacent to it. If there is an arrow pointing in the direction of your card when you slap down a card with an arrow, they will clash. And the numbers on the clash depend on like how strong your cards are, and then RNG, and then a whole bunch of weird bullshit.
Some resistances, physical, magical damage.
Yeah, of course. Like weird resistances, but also it's all random numbers anyway. So a card that is way better can lose to a card that's way worse.
To a card that's way worse.
Yep.
And whichever card loses the clash causes a chain to happen in either direction.
And sometimes you play a card that's like 9 against a card that's 3, and that releases you into a combo that you can never recover from, and it's the second play of the game.
Yes. And that can happen depending on how many arrows your cards have, depending on which direction they're strong, depending on how many spaces you took before the clash happened.
I really dislike how the arrows are random, and you can't actually get used to the idea that getting multiple of a certain card actually means something, or...
And the cards level up as you use them more, so they get better, but usually not by a lot.
Now,
it's a really weird game.
The strat that I used was having 3 lower level monsters and 2 upper level monsters, one of magical damage, one of physical damage. And I strategically placed my lower level monsters so that they could, maybe capture a card or two here and there, but they were there designed to get themselves captured. So that I could create massive chain combos with my big monsters because I knew that my big monsters could beat my own little monsters.
Fuck me, Billy.
Okay, Billy, Billy Bean, let me at least tell you, if you want to play a good card game in a Final Fantasy game, I have a recommendation. Play Final Fantasy VIII.
Play Tetra Master. Play Triple Triad.
Oh my god, Triple
So much
Triad
better.
is so much better. And there's also an iOS Android app that you
There
can
is?
download. Yeah, you have to download the Final Fantasy app, and it's a mini game you can play.
Oh, goody.
Anyway, is Tetra Master good? Borderline. Am
No,
I
it's
happy that it's
bad.
there? Sure, because I can just take a
Abjectly
break.
terrible.
I can just take a break from this, hot dog shit story that I'm running through, and
I
play
would
some
take
kind of
hot
weird
shit
ass
dog shit story instead of a bullshit card game that
I
causes me
think we've-
emotional grief and causes me to rage whenever I get this bullshit combo and then I lose a card that I really liked. And then I have to
I
go
think
through the
we've-
bullshit of trying to get it back by fighting that player with worse cards because they took my best card. And then I get
think
down
we've
this hole
learned-
because they keep taking my good cards and now I'm fucked.
Did you get that out?
I'm done with Tetra Masters.
Okay. I think we've learned officially what the least amount of reward a game can give Billy and still have him play a
2
ton of
months.
things to collect
Yeah.
stuff.
Was Tetra Master fun? No. Did I sink 10 hours into it anyway? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
steps,
the
mini
other
game.
mini game that you could have been sinking time into is Chocobo Hot and Cold, and that's
Fuck
where the real
that.
rewards are. No, not fuck that.
No. Did you
Fuck it.
just... fuck it.
I looked up my record real quick in Tetra Master.
Oh, God.
47, 8, and 6.
I've never been more impressed with you, Billy. This is the moment. You've peaked. Bask in it.
Such
Bask
an
in this
impressive
glory.
guitar.
I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm some kind of like
You handsome bastard.
win ratio guru, but I mean, Floyd Mayweather, eat your heart out.
I'm not going to say nobody gives a shit about Tetra Master, but it's going to be pretty hard to find someone who does.
Esports are going to come back. Tetra Master is going to come back. Blitzball is
Tetra
going to be a
Master's gonna be the
thing,
thing.
and it's going to be competing. You're going to be like top tier Tetra Master right
I
next to the Blitzball
I
player.
play Blitzball. I learned how to
God
hold my
damn it.
breath for 40 minutes.
God damn
So
it.
Chocobo Hot Cold, the actual act of playing the hot cold part isn't great. You're just playing literally a game of hot cold. But when you get the chocographs, that is where it becomes interesting to me personally. The chocographs are treasure maps that you can find on the regular world map, and there are buried treasures at given locations. You kind of get a screenshot that shows you a location, and if you find that place in the world and dig there with your chocobo, you'll unearth a buried treasure and get usually like 4 to 6 items out of that treasure chest. I'd say close to like 3 to 5. 3 to 5 items out of that treasure chest. Usually they are very good for whatever point in the game you're at. So one of the cool things about Hot and Cold is when you get all of the chocographs at a given point in the game, story-wise, the Moogle in the Chocobo Forest tells you there's nothing else to find. Like, move on. Which, again, as Billy said, when you collect all the shit, it's nice when the game says, hey, you collected all the shit, move on with your life. So that's useful. But it's extra useful because Hot and Cold, like, the actual act of going out and finding the chocographs is somewhat fun. And that's the part that I actually enjoy because it makes exploring the world map a little bit more rewarding. Just because they give you, like, these screenshots to go and find.
And they're the
And-
worst screenshots. They're so... Sometimes it's hard to parse out what they are. They're very pixelated. And they're fucking so small. I wish I could zoom in on them.
Yes, and those are real problems, and they were limitations of the PS1. And I think if they could do it again, they would have allowed you to zoom in. But I think it makes you get to know the different environments of the world, and it kind of gives you previews of areas that you haven't seen yet, and different environments you're going to encounter, because you start getting chocographs of places you just straight up can't go.
Yeah.
And as you kind of explore, it gives you a level of familiarity with the world map that you otherwise wouldn't have. So, in a game with a world map, it's nice that they used it.
I like how you can get the chocobo without having to fucking catch it and go through the bullshit you have to go through in order to get a good chocobo in Final Fantasy VII.
That's a great point. It's not bullshit.
I like how the chocobo prevents you from interacting with the random encounters, which, unlike Gino, I have random encounters on.
Yeah, I don't need to level because I know how to speedrun this game.
We should probably talk about that before we finish tonight.
Yeah, we'll talk about that after the story stuff. So, Chocobo Hot and Cold, it's kind of tedious, but as someone who
it's
has
very
played
tedious. I did it like 3 or 4 times. Like, man, am I going to pay this fucking goddamn Moogle 700 gil just to get absolutely nothing out of it and just hit my fucking button over and over again and my finger hurts? And I was like, man, fuck this. And then, yeah, I spent about $700, got nothing out of it, and then walked away.
Well, once you get better at the actual hot and cold game, I can usually get between 4 and 7 items per play. So that
is there
makes it a lot.
God, is there a chocograph hidden in the hot and cold forest?
Yeah, there are like 10. There are
God
a lot.
damn it.
There are a lot. Usually if you find an item that's buried like 40 points underground, it's a chocograph.
Okay, well, I guess, I'll see when I can get back to that.
But it's something that you get better at it the more you play it. Like, there is an element of luck, just sheer luck in that, but you can make it go faster. I'm not going to say it's not a great game. I just think that the chocograph point has merit. The actual going around the world map has merits. It adds a level of interactivity to the world map that the other games don't necessarily have. Then you go to Gizmaluke's Grotto. Gizmaluke sucks.
It's other than the Evil Forest, I think it's a bad level. It's a real bad level. It's
sucks.
I didn't think it was a poorly designed level.
No, I don't mind the Grotto so much as Gizmaluke himself because he's a motherfucker.
Yeah, he's hard.
We got quinoa though, right? Just to clarify, we got quinoa.
I got quinoa.
Oh, and I guess you find out that Vivi's grandpa was a
quinoa.
Q. Yes. Which is potentially story relevant. I guess in the Grotto there's the Moogle family, and that's kind of funny. They got married, and he gets trapped under a bell. You can also climb up the vines where the Moogle family's hanging out, and that takes you up to a plateau where you just get fucking murdered by dragons.
Oh,
like,
actually,
really,
no. I did, yes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I saved right there, so I got murdered, and then I was like, yeah, I can just not go there.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a way to break the game by going up there, but I'm pretty sure there's got to be, right?
I'm sure you could play test it on your next run,
One day. And then you get to Burmecia. Oh, no, actually there's a sequence at Southgate.
Yeah, there's a little thing you do there.
Are you ready for, after watching a horrible act of genocide, for some wacky fun adventures with Steiner and Garnett? Because that's exactly what happens. You watch all of these people get murdered, killed,
well,
deaded.
You're in... I guess
you watch all these black mages shout kill. And then now you have to watch Garnett just get carried around under a pile of pickles.
Sack of pickles.
Geisel pickles. Isn't that how you say it?
I always said Gisal, but yeah,
Gisal?
I think Geisel is right. I don't know.
Gisel. I want that Gisel green.
I also thought it was pronounced Vivi, not Vivi.
I call him Sony Vio.
Pretty sure it's Vivi.
I'm pretty sure it's Vivi.
Works better for my purposes if it's Vivi.
It's Vivi.
But yeah, that sequence is kind of out of
Dumb.
place with
It's
Garnet.
dumb. It's just a waste of time if you want to build up Garnett as a powerful, strong female character that has her own independence. Then why is she beholden to Steiner?
It's basically just an ATE that you have to actually do stuff through.
Well, she's not beholden to him. She tells him what to do, and he fucking does it. Which is more than earlier on, where she kind of takes some of his sass. She starts kind of telling him...
So what exactly are they trying to do? This is something that I actually didn't get. They want to go back to Alexandria to convince Garnet's mother to stop being evil?
Yeah, to give up whatever she's doing. To try and convince her to stop.
Why didn't you do that in the fucking first place before she thought she needed to get kidnapped?
She didn't know she didn't know about the Black Mages or anything. She didn't know that her mother was getting a huge fucking army. She understood that something was wrong, and she wanted to leave, but she...
So wait, she leaves without telling everyone else about her motivations. So she just assumes that all those Black Mages are being created by Alexandria and are a part of an army that's going to take over another nation?
She knows
I
that
know
it's in
she sees the symbol and then was like, oh man, this means that Alexandria is doing it. But she doesn't actually see, other than maybe the Burmecian person coming in, we're being attacked. But she doesn't actually see the terrible plight that the evil mages are racking on the people.
No, she does not realize the seriousness of all of this. And the reason she doesn't tell anyone is because she thinks if she tells them where she's going, they will try to stop her. So it's an example of her kind of getting in over her head. And it's exactly why Zidane said, don't come with us. You don't understand what fucking death looks like. So you're not going to be any good in a war zone. And she proves that that is kind of the case.
I remember saying that I hated the first 2 to 3 hours of this game because I found it to be like bubblegum pop over and over again. When you get to Burmecia, I feel like the game finally develops grit for the first time, because otherwise this game is basically eating banana pudding. It's not bad. It's just fucking banana pudding.
Banana pudding?
And I just, I want a little, put in some fucking vanilla wafers in there. Add some texture, because it's just the same goddamn banana pudding over and over again. And then when you get to Burmecia's castle, or the Ark, or wherever the fuck Freya comes from, it's a nice thing. It's a nice thing to have thematic variety. It's an awkward transition to go back and forth between the idealistic naivety of Garnet to the dire reality of Freya's moment in Burmecia, or what you see in Burmecia, but I greatly appreciated that over the let's just have some fun, wacky adventures in this fantasy world. Yuck, yuck.
And
I'm Steiner. I'm going to call you Princess, even though you want me to not call you Princess, Miss Princess. Ha!
I think that juxtaposition is intentional, but because
then the writers deserve condemnation.
Well, okay. I think that the moment where she says, you should take me along, and they say you don't understand what you would be getting into, and then kind of going through a sequence where there are Burmecian soldiers getting killed left and right, and then juxtaposing that with her having a hard time, interacting with people from Zidane's band of folks, and kind of getting used to interacting with other human beings as adults instead of this weird royal power structure. That being her kind of difficulty, and then seeing what the heck the rest of the party's dealing with, it kind of juxtaposes how naive she is with the realities of what's going to be asked of her. At least I think that's what they're going for. And I really enjoy Burmecia just as a locale, like the City of Rain. That is this city of perpetual rain, where it's just... None of the games that we've played up until this point for the Final Fantasy podcast specifically have shown bodies in the way that this game has. Where
7 a little bit, but they're not quite the same.
Characters, you watch the members of Avalanche get fucking murdered.
You do watch them get fucking murdered, but you don't roll up on a city full of innocent civilians and just find a bunch of dead civilians lying in the ground. And when
Nibelheim. You see dead bodies in Nibelheim.
Yeah, you see people get killed once or twice, but it's not like you walk into a city and it's abandoned because everyone's dead. That, there's something a little bit different about it, and leaving the bodies there so that if you click on them, Like, I don't know about you guys, but the first time I played through, I tried to run up to people to see if any of them were okay.
I did that as well.
And none of them are.
Well, there are some people that are injured and you can save.
Yes, there are some people you can help escape, and there are some people who are physically, like, you encounter, like, Gray or something, or Dan, like, different soldiers who want to just fucking kill Vivi because his people killed their people.
You meet a couple that the guy's like, no, just go on without me, like, make sure our unborn children get out safely, and you can save that guy from the collapse of a building or some structure.
Yeah.
And then I haven't done it yet, but I guess you can go back to Lindblom and meet them. He said that you can. He's like, come find me in Lindblom. You should meet my kids when they're born. And I'm like, all right, sure, I'll go back and do that.
I'll be your OBGYN.
Yeah, and that's kind of that moment I thought was impactful for me. And like you said, it adds grit in a game that up until that point, like, they imply that some heavy stuff is coming, but they don't get to it until Burmecia. And I think Burmecia is the jump off. That is the point at which this game's real.
Oh boy, so the game actually gets interesting in the last hour of an entire disc.
I mean, I enjoyed the earlier parts more than you did, but I would say that this is when it kind of starts getting serious. I would actually argue that the cargo ship is when it starts getting, or Dolly is when it gets a little serious. But some of the themes that it's going to deal with start in Burmecia. What did you guys think of that sequence? I feel like I talked a little.
Which sequence in specific?
Burmecia, just kind of getting there, investigating the city. You eventually find Beatrice, and you meet a blonde-haired or white-haired man riding a silver dragon.
Who wears a thong for some reason?
I liked the Beatrix moment. Just sort of like the inevitability of facing that defeat.
Having a battle that is very clearly against you, and it's a forced loss. That was interesting. So you kind of get the sense that the characters are way over their heads and they're not actually prepared, even though they said, "Don't worry, Garnett, we got this." No, you don't.
Yeah, and just seeing one of the Burmecian soldiers like, "I will stop you, Queen," and then Beatrice is like, "I'm Beatrice. I haven't lost.
You're fucked.
I've killed like 100 fucking men." And as soon as she says her name, the dude just fucking drops to his knees, and you kind of have to jump in. It's a really cool sequence, I think. And then the moment where the cutscene that kind of ends what would be Disc 1 if you were playing on a PlayStation 1 with the dragon kind of taking off and all the characters just kind of in a low point in the rain.
Oh.
I thought that it...
So it's almost like I could use my thematic storytelling, my hero cycle storytelling graph again for this game.
Yeah, you might be able to use the hero's journey again.
That moment's a little contrived, as always. That the just sort of the disdainful walk away.
I agree, but you know what? I'll take it. I'll take the fact that this game has a contrived story over a story that makes no goddamn sense and goes places that are insane. I'm so happy to have a story that follows a plot and follows and commits to a single plot. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good.
So what you're saying is you're in on 9 right now?
No, absolutely not. It needs to prove more to me. I need to see more before I actually commit to it, because for all its problems, I think I ended up enjoying 7 a lot more than you and I anticipated.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see if 9 builds on its strong end of Disc 1. So what are final thoughts of where we are in terms of the story? You're just happy to have, like, fucking ground to stand on.
I'm happy to have ground to stand on. I wish it was better. I wish that the characters were more interesting. I wish they were not walking tropes. I wish that the setting committed towards creating a world more. I wish the world was something that I could explore more. Even when you go to its most impressive locale, which was Lindblom, You don't really learn a lot about that city. You fight a bunch of monsters. You find some pop star that a bunch of girls want to get up in, and the king is a bug that's making some steam machines. I feel like as a fantasy game, as a role-playing game, it creates characters that I don't want to role-play in worlds that are very typical and not at all outside of the purview of what I've seen in fantasy games or stories.
That's fair. And we'll see if the game bucks some of that stuff going forward. Billy.
So I'm trying to compare this as fairly as possible to other Final Fantasy games that I've played, and I think I've just played a lot of the real good ones. So I'm going to try not to hold it in negative comparison to games like 10, which I thought was really good, 7, which I thought was really good, Tactics, other games like that have a lot of the same systems or same mechanics. I'm going to try to look at this as fresh as I can, but right now I'm kind of wishing there was more. I'm wishing that the combat was a little bit more to my liking. I'm wishing that the characters were a little more creative. Particularly Steiner and Quina seem a little bit static to me. I like Freya and I like Vivi, and protagonist Zordon is cool enough, I guess. But yeah, I'm leaving it open for the game to get much better later. But right now, I'm just kind of unimpressed.
You mentioned 7, but I think it's worth noting that 7 has a bumpy first disc. It has a great intro. It's got 50 feet of crap, and then it's got a good ending on its first disc.
Yeah, there are a bunch of sequences that don't mean shit in 7.
And
yeah,
that game,
I'm looking at 7 as a whole.
That game,
yeah, that's
even if you look at 7 as a whole, it has some bad moments.
Yeah,
Like
having played it very recently,
as two people who have just played 7, one of the big things that you can indict 7 as not being so great is it has a great moment and then it follows it up with absolutely nothing, and then you have to wait until another great moment happens. And what I appreciate about 8 is that there are no real gaps between its moments. It just is kind of consistent with setting up characters and building up. I admit it's like an exponential graph that hopefully is an exponential graph that is the one that we've been promised by Gino. We're at that point, but it's a straight line right now. It's not up, down, up, down, up, down, and I almost appreciate that more than, hey, we have a good point, and now we're doing some bullshit with chocobos. Hey, we have another good point, and now we're in the golden saucer. Hey, we're at a good point. Now we have the Temple of the Ancients, which is horse shit.
Yeah, there are a lot of moments in 7 that so I guess I should say it's a lot easier to look back on a Final Fantasy game as this larger picture when you have kind of drank it all in, and you can smooth out the parts that drag or that have a ton of combat or that aren't super.
There's not that
impactful.
much combat in this first disc, which I found kind of surprising. This is an entire disc, and most of the combat is very light. Good on the game for having entire sequences where they realize, hey, it kind of doesn't make sense to have random encounters in this environment.
Yep. They turn them off a lot.
They turn them off a lot.
Which is cool.
We didn't really talk about the mechanic of being able to do that in this, but it's just worth mentioning that in the Steam version and even like the emulator that I played the first time I played this game, you can turn off random encounters and turn like a fast forward mode. That's really nice because there's some times where I just don't want to have to deal with random encounters.
You guys are cheaters.
I think I'm going to be able to, for either Extra Life or Community Endurance Run, because I now know about the fast forward mode in Final Fantasy VIII PC, I might just speedrun them back to back in the time it took me to beat one of them. Pete, last thought.
So I think if this podcast has a theme and it's sort of rambling, that theme would be eventually. It seems like, as Gino's suggesting, this game is making a whole lot of promises that we hope are going to be paid off eventually. And I think what this shows is the financial leverage video games have to pull off this sort of move. You drop 40, $60 on a game, you're probably going to see it through to the end. Whereas other mediums, I don't think I would give them nearly as much time to prove themselves. Were this a movie, were this a book, I'd be done with it already. So I think, while there might be some promise here in the later stages, discs, 2, 3, 4, at a certain point, a game has to deliver on its promises a little bit earlier than this one.
So when you're watching a television show, how many episodes do you give it before you walk away?
So how many?
Depends on how long the season or whatever it is.
Yeah. How many hours have we sunk into?
Because to be honest, I
disc?
hated the entire first season of Breaking Bad, but it has since gone on to become my favorite television show ever. I hated the first 3 seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but it's my number 2.
I wouldn't give it that long.
I wouldn't either. Like, I would take like a 23, 26 episode anime show and give it like maybe 5 episodes. So, that's like 20% of the game. And here we're at 25% about, and I'm still kind of wishing there was more. So
that's fair.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think that there's a contradiction in being patient with video games. I'm patient with television shows. I'm patient with books. I don't know. But I swear to God, Gino, if this game doesn't fucking get better, I'm going to come over to New York and I'm going to stab you in the throat.
So
I think that I've proven over time that I at least have decent taste in games. I don't think I've made you guys play something that's complete horseshit.
You got some big misses on your list, Gino.
What is my big miss?
Undertale. You got Undertale on your list.
You disliked that because of its tweeness. You didn't think that it was poorly made.
Sparkly?
Let's just no.
Did you guys? Did Gino tell you that I was the guy who maybe suggested that to him that you guys should play Charles Barkley's Shut Up and Jam?
Hey, ZP, fuck off.
I like that game. I was fine with that one.
I love that game. I love that game. I know that game forward and backward.
Can't wait to play Silent Hill 4.
You should really play that. It's going to take it a little while. You should really play that.
So,
also get it, because it's hard to find.
I swear, Gino, if what you're promising this game will provide us, if it doesn't happen, I'm going to book the nearest flight to LaGloria, and I'm going to find you, and I'm going to take a 2x4 with nails in it, and I'm going to find you. No video games in your life ever again.
Radical violence aside, Final Fantasy IX has not been a mistake so far.
No, it's not a bad game. Even though we've kind of been, we wish there was more.
So far,
I don't think it's an abjectly terrible game. We haven't played. At no point did Final Fantasy IX offend me. At no point did Final Fantasy assault my senses with a bunch of bullshit, which is what 7 and 8 occasionally do.
Hey, remember when you were trying to get a dolphin to throw you up onto like an electric...
So no minigames is actually a real great thing in 9. Thank God there's no minigames. Holy shit. Oh my God.
Hey, you know how at no point were you like trying to throw a rock concert?
Oh, but this game could totally use a rock concert. Could it?
There's not a rock concert.
There was no J-pop concert. I'm kind of sad about it.
But there is a play. There are plays.
All right, I'm getting my theatrical on. Not hating it.
I can negotiate. I can compromise.
Okay, so with that, I think our first installment into our Final Fantasy IX extravaganza, our Final Fantasy IX Lives.
You clown.
All right, Gino.
Thank you. Thank you, Billy.
Thanks, everybody, for having me. I'm begrudgingly, but all right. So I'm happy to be a part of this crazy train.
This B train, this B train abomination that you guys tolerate. Thank you for tolerating our show, by the way.
Yes, this might not be the best, but I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you for processing our podcasts, which are hilariously longer than anything that you normally produce.
I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest problem with Final Fantasy IX might be its opportunity cost. But, That is what it is at a certain level. Hopefully it picks up.
Yeah, the immediate next sequence, I feel like you guys are going to say the tonal shifts, oh god. And then after that, I think you're going to be in.
Okay.
I think the second sequence in Disc 2, when you see the completion of that, I think you'll be in.
I trust.
Then, thank you, ZP.
Well, I'm going to be here no matter what, so thank you for bringing me into a nightmare. We're really going to play every single Final Fantasy game, aren't we?
This train don't stop.
If you guys play 10 next, I'm down.
I think that's
actually
schedule.
actually the next game we're going to play.
Well, great. So, for the next game, I mean, not for the next game, for the next podcast, I'm thinking we probably want to get towards the middle to end of Disc 2.
Yeah, Disc 2 is long. I looked at the
It's much longer than 1.
Disc 2, it's long.
And we're not going to have to talk about mechanics next time unless there's, like, small tweaks. So we might want to get to what is essentially the end of Disc 2, because I'm going to be gone for a while because I'm getting married.
Right.
Gross.
So we're not going to be able to record one of these for a while.
You and your love.
Sorry. So, with that in mind, let's just get to the end of what is essentially Disc 2. It's there's a sequence at it's called the IFA tree.
Of course. Of course it is.
It's IIFA tree.
Going to the IFA tree.
Yes, it's after the IFA tree.
Okay.
And there's actually 2 sequences in the IFA tree back to back. It's after the second sequence there.
Oh boy, I love it when a game rehashes the same environment but slightly different.
It doesn't rehash the same environment. You go to the same location, but it's very different the second time you go. You don't go to the same places.
So it's IFA Tree Part 2 is what we're trying to do?
Yes.
IFA Tree Redux.
There'll be some cutscenes after that, so we'll include those cutscenes, but that's kind of the last big gameplay sequence.
Yeah.
So, listeners, thank you for sticking around. Thank you, everyone. Till next time. Peace!